Obstacles are a fact of life and of aviation. Obstacles can pop up at the most inconvenient and downright dangerous times. Towers, mountains, trees, all kinds of adversity. Anything in the vicinity of the end of a runway that sticks up above the airport elevation is a potential obstruction. Of most concern are trees growing in the line of a runway's approach or departure path. Obstacle clearance was cited as the cause of 2.5% of all takeoff accidents. That may not sound like much, but consider the relatively small number of takeoffs performed at airports with obstructions and the relatively small number of such airports. Compare those figures to the many more airports with adequate safety zones and the numbers of operations performed there. Obstructed takeoffs are riskier. Obstructed takeoffs require short field procedures. Use all the runway for takeoff. Rotate at the recommended speed for short field and climb at the best angle of climb speed, VX. VX will result in a higher deck angle, and that can be unnerving if you're not used to it. Maintain VX until clear of the obstacle, then transition to best rate of climb, VY, or cruise climb speed for better cooling and better visibility over the nose. The POH can give you the numbers for the distance to land over the mythical 50-foot obstacle. To give yourself a margin of safety when calculating your total landing distance, add 50% to the landing distance over a 50-foot obstacle from the POH. Earlier, we talked about developing personal performance figures for the POH. Do it for obstructed takeoffs and landings, too. To determine landing distance, come over the runway threshold at the proper airspeed and 50 feet AGL, above ground level. See how far down the runway you touch down. Speed control is critical. Too fast and you may not have enough runway to stop. Too slow and you may not make it to the runway. Fortunately, few pilots are banging into things on the way into airports. Obstructions don't show up as a category of landing accidents. But inasmuch as runway length is an accident category, we have to ask if the need to get over some obstacles on approach caused some of the pilots of accident airplanes to run out of runway. Look at that windsock. It's pointing almost straight across the runway. Strong crosswinds are a difficult weather condition. We know they make good landings a challenge, but they complicate takeoffs too. Wind conditions are the third leading cause of takeoff accidents. Just as you do during approach, you've got to compensate for the wind during takeoff, roll, and climb. Practice on the way to the runway by keeping control surfaces properly oriented to the wind while taxiing. Remember, elevator neutral and aileron into direct crosswinds. Climb into quartering headwinds and dive away from them. This will minimize the chance of upset and help you think about the wind direction and get you ready to counter it on takeoff. As you begin the takeoff roll, the aileron should be deflected full into the wind. Their effectiveness increases with speed, so decrease aileron deflection as the airplane accelerates. At liftoff, one wing will be low, and opposite rudder pressure will be maintaining the forward flight path. Essentially, you'll be in a slip. Transition into a crab for the climb. Point the nose into the wind at the angle that will keep your track aligned with the runway. Strong winds are often gusty winds, and that calls for additional considerations. Just as you add extra knots on approach, do the same on takeoff in gusty conditions. Keep the aircraft on the ground longer to get more speed before rotation. Some pilots use a little less nose-up trim to help keep it on the ground, and a little more back pressure for rotation. Once off the runway, climb briskly to put some distance between you and the ground. And maintain an adequate airspeed in the climb to account for the gusts as you do on approach. You know, one of the most common landing mistakes in general aviation, the gear-up landing. Gear-up landings usually occur because pilots are distracted from their normal routine. That's why checklist discipline is essential in preventing these incidents. This pilot knew he had a problem with the gear. That's why he's landing on the grass. The first concern is the safety of all those on board, and these two walked away unharmed. The good news? Gear-up landings rarely cause any injuries besides damage to the pilot's ego. But you owe your airplane better treatment than that, don't you think? Remember, gear down in advance, gump on final, always.